friends. Good to see you tonight. Thank you for joining me and my special guest, Josh Schumann. Josh and I became friends through a mutual project that we participated in. Perhaps you've heard of it, Social Injustice, exposing the false gospel of the social justice movement. If you'd like a copy of this book, then you can contact Josh. I'm sure he'd be happy to get you a signed copy. You can contact me. I'll get you a signed copy from me. You can message us on social media platforms. You know how to contact us, and we'd be happy to get you a copy of this. So Josh wrote the chapter, The Privilege of Being White. You know, just making that statement today makes people nervous. It makes people very nervous when you start talking about white, black, races, racial tensions. Part of the reason that it makes people nervous is because people have been indoctrinated and really propagandized to think, oh, race, we can't talk about that because if we say anything about that, somebody will call us a racist. You know, that's a Marxist ploy, which is to say it's a satanic strategy to shut people up and stop people from communicating. Josh, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be here tonight and with all of you.
Yes.
It was awesome writing the book and all that stuff. So
yeah, it was. And so my chapter was on progressive politics in the church, how progressive politics seeped into the church. So I did a little historical overview. But let's talk about your chapter, Josh, The Privilege of Being White. That's a catchy title for a chapter.
Look, it's I like to catch people's attention, I guess, for the most part, when you talk about a subject, because you have to have something that's going to be able to grab them at that moment, that's going to be able to pull them in. And because if you just go out and you say, well, there is no privilege, well, a lot of people are just going to immediately dismiss that. So instead, you have to be able to throw something out there in order to draw a lot of people in. College campuses are really good for that, and as well as some other things. I mean, some people would think that it's, I guess, provocative or anything, or it's divisive or anything like that. But really, it's mainly about getting the conversation going.
Yeah, and that's one of the things our mutual friend, Jeff Dornick at the Gatekeepers Online, that's one of the things that Jeff tries to do, is to have conversations with people. And I applaud Jeff because he does try to reach out to people that have, well, they have a different point of view than he does. And he tries to reach out to them. And that's putting it mildly, isn't it?
Right. And I think that's what's wrong. I mean, you surround yourself with people who agree with you all the time. So then you're never going to learn anything, and you're never going to teach anybody anything new. Unless you get people to be able to think for themselves or challenge their viewpoint, they're going to go on and keep believing what they believe because they're never, ever going to be challenged on that. And I don't think that's the way that conversation was intended to be had. And that's why I think America is so divisive today, is because we've put ourselves in these own little tribalistic camps.
Yeah, I agree with that, Josh. And in fact, we criticize leftists for that all the time. The media, corporate-owned media, that's a criticism we level at them all the time. We say, you folks don't understand reality because you exist in this echo chamber. All you hear is opinions that you agree with. If you step outside of that and hear some other viewpoints, maybe you'd understand the people you claim you don't understand.
Yeah.
The same thing applies to conservatives, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, and to speak about, I guess, the leftists, I mean, look at what happened to Chris Matthews recently. He just stepped down from his position down hardball because he made a few statements about some political candidates that he disagreed with, and he thought that they were wrong. Chris Matthews is a far leftist. I mean, this is in his wheelhouse, and now he was forced to resign.
Yeah, no, that's that's hard to. It's hard to accept unless you truly understand what's going on. There is a narrative that you must subscribe to, and you must not deviate from.
Right.
Because if you do, you will lose your career. Now, we've already seen that among many conservatives and people of every time I use conservative, Josh, I feel somewhat like, now maybe I shouldn't use that word because it doesn't really describe who I am. And my political views. I guess I'm more of a Christian libertarian, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Although I disagree with a lot of libertarian doctrine and ideas, for the most part, I would consider myself more libertarian than conservative, and definitely not Republican. Let me just put that out in case people are wondering. Well, I mean, you're an old guy and you're white. You must be Republican, right? Wrong. I'm not.
See, and I think that's I think those labels in themselves are very interesting. Like, I call myself a conservative. For a while there, I was really kind of on the fence between a libertarian and a conservative. But the reason why I tended to swing toward a conservative point of view is mainly because the word conservative, it's a point of conservation. And what is it are we trying to conserve? And for me, that is the Constitution. That's the Bill of Rights. That's the Founding Fathers. And not only that, but it goes back further than that to the Pilgrims and the Mayflower Compact, trying to conserve what those people did when they came across the ocean from England, when they were being persecuted by the Church of England, so that they could have religious freedom in this country. And that is what I'm trying to conserve. And that's why I use the term conservative when I describe myself. Granted, my outlook or my viewpoint on that is probably not the same as many other conservatives.
Yeah. Well, you keep going, Josh, and you're going to convince me to begin to use conservative again to describe my political viewpoint. So, but those are good points. What we are trying to do, Josh, myself, many others, certainly many of these folks. And by the way, let me just give this list of other authors in this book. Social Injustice, you can go to Gatekeepers Online. You can contact Josh. He'd be happy to get you a copy. I can get you a copy of this. Other authors, though: Jeff Dornick, Pastor Ken Peters, Dustin Faulkner, Paige Rogers, Ian Gietti, Brandon House, Dr. Andy Woods, Pastor Sam Jones, Reverend Thomas Littleton, and Patrick Wyatt. We cover the gamut of social justice movement. Some of the chapters in this book, folks, the history of social justice, Brandon House wrote, the evangelical social justice movement and its impact upon eschatology. So that's Dr. Andy Woods. And I made mention of this the other day on a program. I haven't read that chapter yet, but I know Andy, and I know where he's going with this and what he means by that. The eschatology of the social justice movement as it is manifested today is dominionism. Kingdom now theology. They are what's the term that poker players use? They're going all in. They are pushing the entire pile of their chips all in on social justice because they think that this is it. This is the tipping point. If we can get this through, we will win. Is that accurate, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so Andy Woods, I'm not familiar with, well, I shouldn't say I'm not familiar with him. I'm more familiar with him now, but he has, and this is what made this book so awesome to write with all these people. I mean, Thomas Littleton, Brennan House, yourself, and Andy Woods completely blew up my world about 2 years ago because my eschatology was totally different. My soteriology was also extremely different. And it was a complete honor to write with some of these people because Andy Woods answered a lot of questions that I had. And one of them was definitely in soteriology. I mean, he's the big proponent on why I'm so adamant on a free grace advocate, and the eschatology of it as well, because it gave me the perception to look at this world now. Because if you're living in this day and age and you're right here, right now, and you think that this is all there is and that this is it, this is the end, then it totally allows you to put yourself into those people's shoes. Like people like Greta Thunberg or some of these, George Soros or some of these people who are trying to take their own vision of what they believe the kingdom is and force it down their own viewpoints. Well, if we leave it to man to decide what this kingdom is, it's going to be full of flawed. We are flawed people. We are imperfect. And I mean, it's impressive we survived this long.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's a very good point, Josh. Everyone has a worldview, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they may not call it that, they may not use that phrase. Everyone has a theology of life and of afterlife. Now, again, they may not use that phrase. They may not be able to enunciate it or define it or describe it that way. But everyone has an opinion or an idea or a belief about what life is, what it should consist of, and where we are going. Is humanity headed someplace? Everybody has a worldview that seeks to answer those questions. And everybody, even I believe, Josh, even the person who is the staunchest atheist that says, I don't believe there's anything, that's it. Well, that doesn't work either. So,
Right.
To Josh's point, everybody has a worldview. The question we should ask ourselves is, what worldview best fits the facts, best fits the reality that we see? What worldview offers the most hope, that values and gives sanctity to human life, that best stewards the planet using the resources that we've been given? And I think hands down, Josh, hands down, it's not even close. Christian theism answers the call every time. What's your thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really, when it comes down to, now granted, everybody has their own individual point of view on what they think the world should look like. But when you take a step back and you look at it from, I guess, the big picture angle, you see that it comes down to either you're serving God or you're serving yourself. And a lot of this, I mean, you look at the social justice, all these programs that are put into place, abortion is a service of self because that child inconveniences you. Now you can get rid of it. The affirmative action programs throughout like the colleges and everything like that. That's all, giving people the well, you can't do it on your own. So you deserve the best that you can be. And, if you can't work for that, or if you just don't feel like you can give enough, well, it's okay because you deserve it. And everything about social justice, even the white privilege aspect of things, or, the victimhood mentality, it's all making it about yourself because you can't get anywhere on your own merit, supposedly, because you're too lazy to get off your butt and work.
Yeah. Well, and you're, yes. So to speak again on that subject, white privilege, that comes right out of, Josh, as you already know, folks, white privilege, white supremacy, all of this nonsense comes out of critical theory, critical race theory, and what it is designed specifically to do, folks, you need to understand this. It is designed to create race, class warfare. It is designed to divide so that we can be conquered. This nation has never been as separated in my life. I've never seen such division.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when I remember growing up in school, race wasn't even a thing. I mean, I grew up in school. Nobody ever talked about it. It seemed like the whole time through, what am I trying to say here? It just wasn't talked about. It wasn't even discussed. And all of a sudden, when, and Obama comes in to office, and I mean, I hate throwing stones, but if he's the guy, he's the guy. When the shooting happened in Charlottesville, or the Hands Up, Don't Shoot movement ended up happening. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Ferguson. Sorry. Ferguson, Missouri, when that whole thing came up with Hands Up, Don't Shoot. And then with the police shooting in Texas, I believe,
Mhm.
that really began the huge divide for all this stuff. That's when you had all these people thinking that, well, there's issues, and there was never issues before, but because you decided to make issues, they present themselves.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And before I faded to black there, what I was trying to say, what I was trying to say, folks, is do your own research. I'm sure Josh has said this a number of times. I say it all the time, including from the pulpit in my own church. I wish I had a dime every time I told people that are sitting in a service and I'm preaching. Listen, you don't have to believe a word I say. You've got the scriptures. You do the research. You check it out for yourself. But what I think you'll find, what I know you're going to find, is I'm telling the truth. I'll tell you the same thing when it comes to critical theory. You do the homework, and what you'll find is critical theory is a Marxist communist strategy developed to divide us so that we can be conquered. The racial issues we have today are deliberately being fomented by, and it goes way beyond just race baiters.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are race baiters for sure. There are people that are puppet masters, and they're pulling the strings on this, folks, just to try and start a race war. I think they want to see that so that they can move in and put lockdown government on us. Now, some of you may think, oh, Mike, that is so over the top. I would just encourage you to wake up and smell the coffee, because it's happening right in front of our eyes. Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, okay. The easiest part to take control of a situation. Okay, so just as an example, growing up through high school, I worked as a welder in the shop, built a bunch of Bobcats and stuff like that. Well, we used to always play pranks on each other back and forth and everything like that. Well, normally the guy playing the pranks is the guy who was in control. So you had to have power over, I guess, that's kind of thing. So myself, I ended up creating chaos, and I ended up playing pranks on this one gentleman. And then I played that same prank I played on him on myself. That way, when he came back and thought it was me, I was like, no, the same thing happened to me. So it must have been that guy. Well, then both of us, and granted, I knew it was me, but both of us, and I got him, started pranking that guy. And then those two started going at it. And then meanwhile, this entire time I was like, hey guys, maybe we should stop all this and not, continue on. That was a moment for me to take control of that situation because I created the chaos, right? The same thing is happening with the government and what they're trying to instigate today. They're trying to create division amongst ourselves because once there is that division, we start fighting with one another and we start bickering with one another to the point of like Antifa in the streets and stuff like that's happening out there. That gives the government an excuse to take power when they shouldn't have it and quash the American people and supposedly, remove your Second Amendment because we can't handle our responsibilities.
Yeah, and the scary thing is right now, Josh, in the climate that we live in the time that we live in, I'm not sure. In fact, I would probably hedge toward they've already done it. They've probably already embedded laws that we're not even aware of. They've passed them it's going to give them absolute power and control, take away our civil rights, freedom of speech. It's going to take away our gun rights by the stroke of a pen when they say the time is now. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Virginia was a good example of that. What happened over there with I think the red flag laws are garbage. Them wanting to go away and take assault rifles away when they can't even demonstrate or talk about or define what they actually are. It's all a simple excuse to create chaos. And like you said, I think, and granted, I don't mean to give advice to any of these guys, but I think he tested the waters to see if he could go out there and do all this stuff. And then he realized, okay, I am not going to be able to do any of this. But I would venture to say that I would see a huge tax increase on many of the firearms, many of the ammunitions, and they were just increasing taxes to the point where nobody could afford it because it would be so slow and so gradual that it wouldn't be just a big stroke of the pen, right off the bat. If I were a Democrat, that's what I would do. And I think we see it happening. I mean, you're trying to get, serial numbers on each round so they know who everybody goes to and everything like that. I think it's just crazy.
Yeah, it is, and that's a pipe dream.
Right.
I can't imagine how they would ever pull that. Well, maybe
No.
they can. I just think it's impossible to serialize every round of ant. Are you serious, folks? Do you know
Yeah.
what kind of? Oh my goodness. Anyway, Josh, one of the things that I think that conservatives, libertarians, patriots need to do is we need to come together. We need to
Hmm.
get rid of our differences, things that are
Yep.
keeping us apart. We need to come together and we need to form a powerful coalition that's going to begin taking back our state governments. And I think this is a key strategy that people in our community need to understand. Uh, we need to take back our governments. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about some kind of dominionist take back. No, no. I'm talking
Hmm.
about making sure we put the right elected officials in the governor's house, in our state House of Representatives and state Senate, so that when the federal government starts pushing this nonsense, starts saying, well, here's the law, our governors will be in place and we'll be backing them up saying, we expect you to tell them to bug off because we're
Yep.
not going to enact that and we're not going to follow it. That's a good strategy, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think it's about educating the people that, I mean, you're around within your own communities. And in fact, I talked about this a little bit at the conference, it would have been last weekend, is it starts in your church, right? Your church or your pastor is there to equip you with the means to go out into the world to tell people that, hey, this is wrong, this needs to change, or this is what better serves our community. Once that happens, it's kind of like a butterfly effect. It just goes out, and then those cities affect those cities, and those cities affect those cities. Well, once you all get there, then you have a basic understanding of those who you live with in your own communities. And instead of throwing a bunch of money at these campaigns and all these, rich guys running for office, we need to elect the person to serve, a person with a servant's heart who is actually going to stand for the rights of your own state or your own county. This was actually brought up today at work, but whatever happened to a politician, like, forget party lines, forget Democrat, forget Republican. Remember your state. Remember the people that you represent, the people that gave you that power. You are their voice. So quit acting like somebody's whipping boy that's up on, the Democratic or the Republican platform. Instead, take charge of what you believe in and what your people believe in that puts you in that seat, and speak out for what they believe in, stand for what they believe in. From my own state, which is a really conservative state, ended up voting to approve Obamacare. That's crazy. They're all gone now. I mean, two of them were kicked out of office elected out of office. And then the other one was like, yeah, I'm not going to give this a shot. And he stepped down. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, guys. All you have to do is 70% of my state stood against Obamacare, and yet they passed it because they
Politicians
want to
voted
stand by
for it
party
anyway.
lines rather than state.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with that. Listen, folks, there's a reason why small business owners go into Congress and after a couple of terms in office, they're multimillionaires. There's a reason for that. You know why? Because they're getting paid to vote a particular way. Now, some people may say, well, Mike, that is so cynical. No, that's reality.
Yep.
There's a reason why. Now, I don't have the percentage on the top of my mind right now, but it's a very large percentage. So I'm not going to say it's a very large percentage of senators that are multi-millionaires. Now, granted, a few of them went into office as multi-millionaires. Their wealth has only increased. Those that went in and they were nowhere near millionaire, they're multi-millionaires now. It's no secret how that's happening, folks. Lobbyists are paying for votes. We've got to stop that and break that monopoly, but it has to start at the state. It has to start at the state level. We have to hold those responsible to represent us. When we send them to Washington, If they don't toe the line, folks, we have to enter into a very aggressive recall policy. Now, Josh, I just want to make sure people understand that we're not saying that politics is our savior. We're going to straighten this mess out. That's not what we're saying.
No.
We got to start someplace.
Yep.
Right?
Politics is more of a tool. Just to add to your point, I wanted to add to your point about the whole money game is if you were watching any of the debates, Mike Bloomberg actually caught himself saying that he bought houses or seats in the 2018 race. So it is definitely happening. That and, that should be a reason for these people to go, and that's why they need to be elected. But, oh no. I just lost my complete train of thought.
Hey, I thought I was the only one that happened to.
Oh, man. What was your question again?
Yeah, so folks, Josh and I have been talking about what's going on in our nation. So go ahead.
I got it now. Yeah, politics is a tool. It's an ability for us to exercise what this nation was founded to be, right? You can't right now, like, it would be great. And I've met some people who think this way, that a theocratic rule would be great in today's day and age, because there are now, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the kingdom now theology. A lot of people think that right now should be ran as a theocratic state. In a perfect world, sure, that would be great to run in a Christian state. We have tried this in the past and have been shown that it obviously doesn't work, because humans are flawless and drawn to power. What do you think the Dark Ages was all about? Only the highly religious or the highly elite or, the Church of England, only those people were allowed to have Bibles or access to them. Only them were able to tell the people what they needed, so they could literally tell them anything that they wanted. And they were called the Dark Ages. I mean, it was bad. We can't go there yet, because first of all, when that kingdom does come, Christ will be ruling with a rod of iron. No human person is going to be able to have that ability. But us here on this earth, we need to take politics. We need to take the Constitution in the way that is working for us. The American Constitution and the way our republic works was an experiment that has lasted far longer than any other nation has ever lasted, without having to go back and completely redo everything, or without another, complete war or overtaking.
Yeah,
and I think that has plenty to say it for itself.
Yeah, and folks, there's coming a theocratic kingdom. It's called the millennial reign of Jesus Christ. It's coming, but he will reign in righteousness. To Josh's point, Absolutely. He will reign with a rod of iron. But guess what? We will celebrate and praise God when that time comes. Why do I say we? I'm talking about Josh and I, because we're born again believers. We know in whom we have believed. We know what the scripture says. We know what's coming. We celebrate that day. But listen, we're not trying to push that down anybody's throat. What we're trying to say is a Republican form of government, not the R Republican. I'm talking about a republic, form of a republic. That government form has served us exemplary, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have taken advantage of the system that we live under today. And yes, it has become corrupted and perverted. Part of it is, and I know if we had Pastor Sam Jones and Patrick Wyatt on here with us, Josh, that we could just sit back and let them go now, because we've already primed that. we could talk about judicial activism. We could talk about judicial tyranny. We could talk about how the courts need to back off and just start interpreting and not creating law.
Yes.
I'll let you go on that. Go ahead.
You're exactly right. The Supreme Court was originally founded with only 3 justices. That's it. There was only 3. And now we have 9. And now they're talking about expanding that even more. Not only that, but they're giving the Supreme Court power to write law, essentially. I mean, isn't that what this Roe versus Wade stuff, or all this precedence is? Like, well, it came to the courts. We have to go back to precedence. Why? Your job is to interpret the Constitution and enforce the Constitution how it was intended to be written. That was their position at the beginning. And it has been so perverted. I mean, back when the founding fathers were around, they didn't even give the Supreme Court a room. They had to use, I think it was the library in the state capitol, because they figured that they would only meet there like a couple times a year. And I think it was written by I can't remember his name. It's in David Barton's book Spiritual Heritage, but they thought that if they met like 6 times a year, that it was a crazy year. And now look at how often the Supreme Court is meeting. It's how much power we've given these elected officials over our lives, that I think it's because we're lazy. I think it's true. And granted, I'm a millennial. Like, I know all about this, right? So we don't want our rights. We can't. I'm speaking facetiously. We can't handle our rights, is what a lot of people think. And granted, I don't smoke. I haven't smoked, but I brought this point to task a while ago, and people wanted a smoke-free area or whatever. And instead of allowing the businesses with the freedom that they had to create smoke-free establishments, we instead went to the government and we were like, we can't handle our own decision-making skills. So can you please establish that nobody can smoke in public places now? And granted, it's something small. It really is. But it's more power given to the government. And imagine that's what's going to be happening to our free speech. I can't handle what that person is saying right now because it hurts me emotionally. Well, because that such and such small group can't handle it, now you're no longer allowed to say it.
Yeah. Well, so let's extrapolate that out, Josh. So we went to the government and we said, oh, please help us with this issue of, can people smoke in restaurants when non-smokers are there? Please tell us, and then we'll obey. And so we've went from there now to, we've got our courts telling parents the mother wants the son to be a girl, so we're going to allow him to, or her, to transition her son to a girl, and the father has nothing to say about it because we're the court and we've spoken.
Yep.
That's where we've got, folks. It's insanity. We need to put the brakes on.
Absolutely. Especially, if I could remember that little boy's name down in Texas.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of.
Okay, that just drove me up a wall. I did a whole episode on this child. His mother was a pediatrician, and she was stating all this. She should have her license revoked. She should be taken in for child abuse, because that is exactly what it is. When a child is growing up, they don't know things. Okay, that's what I'll be completely blunt. Kids are dumb. Let's be honest. Little boy, I feel so bad for my mom. I was like a suicide machine. Okay, jumping off all this stuff and sledding down all these things, and oh, my poor mom. With that, my mom also told me, no, you can't do that or you will get hurt, and the oven is hot. Don't put your hand on the oven. The same thing comes down to little boys and little girls. They should be brought up separately because they are completely different human beings. Just ask my wife. We are completely different people. And it is because we are different people that we mesh so well together and that we complement each other's attributes. I'm really blunt and really to the point, and my wife is so comforting and able to be there for people. And we make a really good team on things. And that's how it is. Men and women are just generally different. Even in the workplace, women have their compassionate side and they're able to take care of other things, or be able to think more so how things affect different things in kind of a bigger picture, because their mind kind of goes way ahead. Like, my wife and I are planning this trip, and we're taking our motorcycles into the mountains, and my wife has everything planned. She has each and every gas station all lined out and ready to go. Everything is so perfect and pristine. Me, myself, before I met her, I would hop on and go. And if I ran out of gas, it'd make a great story later. But it's because we're different people, and it's because of her that I'm not going to be stranded on the side of the road. We complement each other very, very well. And that's what men and women are supposed to do. And when you strip that away from a child and you take away his identity or her identity of what she is supposed to be or what he is supposed to be, then they're even more confused. And we see that the suicide rates, I think they more than double or triple when in transgender community. And I know I give a lot of grief and stuff to the transgender community, and it's because it is completely outrageous that you can just make up all this stuff. But I do it out of love to show them how stupid and idiotic it is to just pretend you can be anything you want to be. Because when you separate yourself from reality, you can no longer comprehend what it's like to live in the real world.
Yeah. Well, I've made this illustration from the pulpit before, but if mankind manages to live another 100 years, 200 years, 300, they'll look back on this time, this era, not just in America, but all around the world, and they will scratch their heads and wonder, what were they thinking?
Absolutely.
We have men who think they're women. Listen, guys, you can think you're an elephant. You're a man. And if they exhume your bones and do a DNA test, you can have all the jewelry, high heels, and whatever else you want in that coffin. And they're going to say, well, this was a strange situation. This was a man with all of this stuff.
Right.
You can't change who you are. Now, that's probably going to get a lot of hateful responses, but that's okay, because you just need to get in line.
And I know those of you who are familiar with my show, I did a segment on this where this is a male and that's a female. No matter how I pretend to make this a female, it will never plug into something like this, like it only works one way. What it is what it is. And to try to distort that, like I said, it comes back to the religion of self. You go so far into worshiping yourself, into what you wish you were or wish you could be, that you even deny reality as it exists. And I think it's truly really sad. It's really disheartening to see people lose reality that much.
Yeah. And unfortunately, our government is controlled by people who want to continue to allow people to live in this deceit.
Right.
It's really a delusion. And the reason, folks, and if this has hit a nerve with anybody out there today, the reason for that is so that they can control you. They are controlling you for their purposes. You are nothing but a pawn on the big chessboard that they're playing. Your life, they're playing with and allowing you to stay in your delusion. That may be a little bit too blunt for some people to take, but I hope you'll take it to heart. I hope you'll take it in the way that it is offered to you. Josh and I are trying to help folks. So I don't know how we got on this subject, but that's fine, because we just talk about whatever comes to mind. Honestly, folks, Josh and I didn't have a script. We said, let's just pray and let's let the Holy Spirit lead us, and we'll touch on whatever the Lord brings up. So, Josh, you've got a show that you do. You've mentioned it a couple times now. Why don't you tell people about that?
Yeah, so I do a show called on the Gatekeepers Network. It's at gatekeepersonline.com. And basically, I do a show where I just take societal issues from a biblical perspective. And it kind of talk about anything and everything. Like, I know when Jeff Dornick mentions, I talk about this and Sam Jones talks about that. And Schumann just talks about whatever he wants. And that's really what it is. It's an ability for me to take what's going on in society, what's hitting us right now that we face every day, every time you leave your home. And granted, I live in a small town and there isn't much going on, but even here I'm being hit with it. And I read about it all the time. And I was listening to someone one day and they said that pretty soon, my generation won't be around anymore. And he was kind of, a little bit of an older gentleman. And he said, I really need young people to take up the mantle. And that's what I'm trying to do, because we need somebody who's going to take on these social issues that are happening today, because they will infect our church if everybody just stays silent, and they will infect our Mayan community or our communities. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to come on there, and I guess some people think I'm funny, which is weird, but I guess I'm entertaining. So that's always good. My show is called The Schumann Show. In the summer, my show doesn't come out that often because I'm extremely busy in the summer, but during the winter, I kick off and I try to push out an episode about every week throughout what's going on. I'm also a big proponent of the free grace message through Andy Woods and Grant Hawley were big people, as well as Zane Hodges. That's another big thing I talk about, because I know growing up, I had so many questions on what being saved was all about. So that's kind of what I do. And honestly, you can write an email to me and ask me questions. It's Straight White Shoe. That's STR8 WHITE at outlook.com. And most of the questions I get, I'll honestly just do a segment on that, because I'm genuinely concerned with the questions that are out there, because I was that person. And I think it's important to ask questions, especially in today's day and age.
Absolutely, it is. I couldn't agree more, Josh. And I'm just smiling. I don't know if you saw that on the other monitor or not. I'm just smiling listening to you talk about free grace. Here's one I'm reading.
Yep, I just finished it.
Here's one I'm reading.
That is awesome. Yep.
Here's one. So I've got all these books here.
Yeah.
Of traditional soteriology, not Calvinism. And then, of course, this one's a classic.
Yep. So
I'm writing a paper right now, Josh, on soteriology, on the doctrine of salvation. Of course, I'm a free grace proponent, a Calvary Chapel pastor. You folks know that. I'm not a lordship salvation person at all. Yeah. Even though it was funny a couple of weeks ago, Josh, I had posted something from Tozer, A.W. Tozer, love Tozer, and I had posted something about a statement or a quotation that Tozer had made, and a couple of guys jumped on there. They didn't know me from Adam, and they jumped on and started making comments about, well, that's lordship salvation, and I basically said, well, you're nuttier than a fruitcake. First of all, you don't know me, or you would know that that's not true. Secondly, there's nothing in that quotation that even hints at lordship salvation. I would have seen it. Folks, listen. I would encourage you to go to gatekeepersonline.com and subscribe to that network, and then you'll have Josh's program is there. But there's also, I think Sam has a program, Jeff has a program. There's all kinds of articles being posted all the time, gatekeepersonline.com. I would encourage you, Josh, is there a way that they can connect with you on social media or by email or something?
I have a Twitter account. It is the same as I don't know if this is showing down.
I think Gabby's got it up right there. Yep. There it is. Yeah, right there.
If you go at Straight White Shoe, I should come up. You'll see the background and my ugly mug on it. Just write me a message, or leave a comment or anything like that, or give me a follow. And granted, like I said, I won't be putting out a bunch of content during the summer because I do work in the construction field. I want to stress that if you leave me a message and you have genuine questions and genuine issues that you're going through in your life, or questions whether it's regarding to scripture or it's regarding to what the world is doing, just shoot me a message. And if I don't have enough time to make an episode about it or anything like that, let's talk about these things one-on-one, just you and I. I have enough time to send a message every now and then, and that's not a big deal. The other thing I want to point out is that book that you were holding up, A Free Grace Primer by Zane Hodges. It's a huge book. I think it's 3 books put together, but definitely, if you have any questions in regards to, well, am I saved? Am I not saved? What is the standards for being saved? Or have I done enough or anything like that? All these questions that maybe just haunting you or anything like that, this is the book to get. It is unbelievable. He takes the whole first section is, I believe, about the woman at the well, and it is absolutely, he writes it like a story, and it is so easy to understand. I can understand it, and there's no pictures. So seriously, reach out, and it'll answer your questions, and the rest of the book does dig in deeper, but the way he writes is absolutely poetic. It is incredible.
Yeah. And I second that, folks. So I would encourage you to do that. I'm a reader, folks. Well, I mean, I love to read. I love a good book. I love a good argument in a book. And folks, I still learn things. I want you to understand that. Don't ever get to a place where you think you've got it all figured out. You're dangerous. When you get to a place you think you've got it all figured out, you're actually dangerous to yourself and those that are listening to you. You better have a teachable spirit at all times. There are so many in the Christian community that they think they've acquired the celebrity status and nobody can tell them anything. I've run across a couple of those people, and they're a mess. I'll just put it that way. They're a mess. Zane Hodges, of course, he's with the Lord now. He does a fantastic job with the subject of salvation, how we should approach it. Listen, it is by faith alone, in Christ alone. Can we not agree on that? Faith alone, Christ alone. That's the message we need to take. Josh, I appreciate you joining me today. This has been a lot of fun chatting with you, brother.
Man, it's so weird for me because, like, I grew up knowing about you, and I grew up knowing about Andy Woods and Brandon House, and to be able to partake in that and to be able to come onto your show is just an incredible experience for myself. When I started this whole gatekeepers thing, I started it with Jeff, and actually a little bit of an argument because, as you know, Jeff is a Calvinist, and he asked me, because I had an opposing view, to come on and do stuff with him. And the amount of people that I have come in contact with, and the opportunities that it has presented to me has completely been a God thing. And this whole adventure that I'm on, I have nobody else to thank but then God. It's been an incredible time to get to know each and every one of you. And, each and every one of my fans, like, I don't know who you are, but one of you sent me lighting equipment, and it's just been such a huge blessing in my life. And that I think you guys have done more for me than what I will ever do for any of you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, Josh. I appreciate you, and I see myself as one of those guys. Listen, I'm 64 years old now, and it seems crazy just saying that. I don't feel that way. I feel about 30. Honestly, I feel good. My health's good. My mind is straight and on point, and of course, I pray about that all the time. Lord, keep me on point, focused and zeroed in, and He has done that. But I'm one of those guys, Josh. I'm looking at people like you, and I'm saying, "Oh, thank God that He is raising up people." Because, hey, if He gives me another 10, 15 years, I'm going to be out of here. And there needs to be people, men of God, who understand the issues today and are not afraid to speak to them with passion, with love. We need people like you, Josh. So I appreciate you. Folks, the book is Social Injustice. Please get a copy. You can go to Gatekeepers Online and get that. You can contact Josh on Twitter. He'd be happy to hook you up with one. There you go. And you can contact me. My stuff's out there. That's that. Be happy to get a copy in your hands. Josh, God bless you, brother.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
We'll do it again.
Absolutely.
That's all for this time.